My name is Cassie Miller. I'm 34 years old, and I never imagined I'd open my front door to find my in-laws, Martha and Gerald, standing there with three intimidating men whose cold eyes gave away their intent. Want the heat off? Hand us the house, Martha hissed, her tone venomous. Gerald just nodded, smug and silent. My husband, Nathan, stood beside me, frozen, his face a portrait of confusion and fear. What they didn't know was that beneath my calm counselor exterior lived a past that had prepared me exactly for moments like this. But before I take you deep into this insane story, let me know. Where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments. Hit that like button if you've ever dealt with manipulative in-laws, and don't forget to subscribe for more true stories of standing up to intimidation. Now let me take you back to the beginning. Nathan and I met 5 years ago at a charity auction for the local children's hospital. I was volunteering at the registration table when this tall, soft-spoken man with slightly messy brown hair approached to make a surprisingly generous donation, especially for someone who didn't exactly look like your typical high-rolling donor. We struck up a conversation, and by the end of the night, we had exchanged numbers. There was something about Nathan, gentle, confident, that pulled me in right away. Things moved fast. 8 months later, he proposed during a hike to our favorite waterfall. Nathan worked as an architectural engineer, focused on sustainable commercial buildings. I had just settled into my role as a high school guidance counselor. What he didn't know at the time was that I had chosen this career very deliberately, as a quiet escape from a former life I rarely talked about. I found peace in helping teens through their struggles. The steady rhythm of school days offered me the stability I'd longed for. You would have loved my grandma, Nathan used to say during our first year of marriage. Gloria had raised him for most of his childhood, while his parents built their luxury import business overseas. When Gloria passed away 6 months after our wedding, we were both devastated. What came next shocked us even more: the reading of her will. She left us the house, Nathan whispered in disbelief. It was Gloria's Victorian gem in the historic district. 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, a wraparound porch, and ancient oaks out front. Built in the 1890s and lovingly updated ever since, the home wasn't just valuable, it was priceless. This is where we used to catch fireflies in the summer, Nathan told me as he gave me a tour, his voice catching with emotion. She taught me to bake cookies in this kitchen. We made it our own. Weekends were spent painting, restoring, and breathing new life into it. Modern countertops, original cabinets, soft, inviting colors. It was a blend of old charm and new comfort, and it felt like Gloria approved. But not everyone was happy about it. Nathan's parents, Martha and Gerald, had never liked me. But after the inheritance, their cold indifference turned into open hostility. She should have left it to us, I overheard Martha complain at the funeral reception. What do they know about preserving historic homes? From day one, Martha made it clear I wasn't the daughter-in-law she had imagined. At our first meeting, she studied me like a tax return, asking invasive questions about my upbringing and education. When I told her I'd been raised by a single mom and attended state university on scholarships, her tight-lipped smile said it all. Gerald was even more blunt. Nathan dated Kimberly Russell before you. Her father owns half the real estate downtown, he said casually during our engagement dinner. Nathan just squeezed my hand under the table. It was obvious. I wasn't their dream. But their disappointment extended to Nathan too. He had chosen not to join their import empire, instead dedicating himself to environmentally conscious design. It didn't sit well with Gerald. You have an obligation to the family legacy, he'd lecture at holidays. Nathan would respond politely, explaining his passion. But those talks always ended with Gerald storming out and Martha muttering passive-aggressive remarks. Things took a darker turn when Nathan's sister, Elaine, reached out. Dad's business is in serious trouble, she confided. They lost their main supplier. There's talk of bankruptcy. Still, Martha and Gerald kept up appearances, hosting lavish parties, buying designer clothes, driving new luxury cars. But behind the mask, cracks were forming. Did you hear about Gerald's poker games? Nathan's cousin Stephen had whispered during a family event. He's mixed up with some dangerous people. The desperation showed. At dinner recently, a drunk Gerald muttered something that stuck with me. "That house is wasted on you two," he slurred. "No kids, no idea what it's worth." Martha quickly hushed him, but his words haunted me. There was something calculating in his eyes. "They're just bitter," Nathan said afterward. "They'll get over it." But my instincts, long, buried, started kicking in again. I began to pay closer attention, and sure enough, those instincts were about to prove terrifyingly accurate. It happened one Sunday afternoon. Nathan and I were in the living room, sketching plans for a garden renovation, when the doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw Martha's flawless silver hair, Gerald's stiff posture, and 3 strangers behind them. They didn't say, "They were coming," Nathan muttered, opening the door. But whatever welcome he had prepared vanished when he saw the men. Martha wore a tailored trench coat, despite the warm weather. Gerald adjusted his watch with practiced arrogance. "We need to talk," Gerald said, barging past Nathan into the foyer like he owned the place. Martha followed, her heels clicking sharply across the floor. Then the men came in. "This is Marcus," Gerald said, gesturing toward a broad-shouldered man with a scar over his eyebrow. "And that's Devin and Troy." Devin was stocky, with tattoos on his wrists. Troy was lean, sharp-eyed, and alert, scanning the house like a hawk. "What's going on, Dad?" Nathan asked, stepping closer to me. "We're here to resolve the house situation," Martha said coolly. "Things have gotten complicated, and we need a simple solution." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. And that's when I knew. This wasn't a visit. It was a takeover. Gerald pulled an envelope from his jacket pocket. "These are papers transferring ownership of this house to us. Sign them today and we'll allow you to stay as tenants for 3 months while you find somewhere else." Nathan's voice rose in disbelief. "This is our house. Grandma Gloria left it to us legally. Don't be naive." Gerald snapped back coldly. "The business is in trouble. We need liquid assets, and this house is the answer. You didn't earn it. You didn't pay for it. You just got lucky." "I'm not signing anything," Nathan said firmly. "This is our home." Martha's expression hardened. "You don't understand the situation, Nathan. Your father has obligations that must be met. If they aren't, there could be consequences." "Are you threatening us?" I asked, finding my voice. Gerald's eyes slid toward the 3 men who stood silently behind him, watching the exchange. "I'm simply saying accidents happen when debts aren't paid. Homes catch fire, cars malfunction, people get hurt. Get out!" Nathan said, his voice shaking with anger. "Get out of our house right now." Gerald placed the envelope on our side table. "Think carefully about this. You have 24 hours to make the right decision." Without another word, they left, the 3 men following them out to a black SUV parked at the curb. Nathan immediately locked the door and leaned against it, his face pale. "I can't believe this is happening," he whispered. "My own parents." He pulled out his phone and dialed his father's number. Through the speaker, I could hear Gerald's cold, distant voice. "Have you come to your senses?" Gerald asked without preamble. "Dad, this is insane. You can't just demand our house and threaten us. What's really going on? Let me help you figure out another solution for the business." "There is no other solution. The house is worth over $1 million in today's market. That solves our problem. Your problem is deciding whether your home is worth more than your safety." "You can't mean that. You're my father. Mom wouldn't let you do this." "Your mother agrees completely. This is business, Nathan. Nothing personal." "Nothing personal? You're threatening your own son." 24 hours, Gerald said firmly, and then the line went dead. Nathan stared at his phone in disbelief and hung up on me. My own father just threatened us and hung up. We moved to the kitchen where Nathan collapsed into a chair, his hands shaking. I made him tea, my mind already calculating risks and contingencies. "I don't understand how they could do this," Nathan said, his voice hollow. "These are the people who raised me. How could they bring criminals into our home and threaten us?" "I think your father is in deeper trouble than we realized," I said carefully. Those men weren't just random thugs. They moved like professionals. Nathan looked up sharply. How would you know that? I hesitated. Just an observation. The point is, we need to take this seriously. Those weren't idle threats. Should we call the police? Nathan asked. Not yet, I said, surprising myself. We don't have proof of threats, just implications. And if your father is mixed up with dangerous people, escalating too quickly could make things worse. So what do we do? First, we increase security. New locks tonight. Security cameras tomorrow. I know someone who can install them quickly. I was already mentally reviewing the house's vulnerabilities. I should try to talk to my mother alone, Nathan suggested. Maybe she'll be reasonable if my father isn't there. I nodded, though I doubted Martha would be any more reasonable. The cold determination in her eyes had told me everything I needed to know. We'll figure this out, I assured him, squeezing his hand. They picked the wrong house to target. Nathan gave me a weak smile, not understanding the full meaning behind my words. He couldn't know that the skills I'd spent years trying to leave behind were already reawakening, that my mind was already mapping out defensive strategies and contingency plans. For now, I would let him believe we were just a normal couple facing an unusual threat. But if Gerald and his hired muscle pushed us further, they would discover exactly why they had indeed picked the wrong target. 3 days after the ultimatum, Nathan woke me at 6 a.m., his voice tight with anger. They slashed my tires, he said as I followed him to the driveway in my bathrobe. His car sat lopsided, all 4 tires flat, with knife cuts clearly visible in the rubber. The driver's side door had been keyed, a deep scratch running its entire length. Under the windshield wiper was a note printed on plain white paper. This is just the beginning. Reconsider our offer. We're calling the police, I said firmly. All hesitation gone. This was documented property damage with an implicit threat. We needed an official record. Officer Ryan Davis arrived 30 minutes later, a solidly built man with a methodical approach that I appreciated. He documented everything, carefully took the note as evidence, and asked all the right questions. Do you have any security cameras? He asked, looking around our property. Being installed tomorrow, I told him. We've had verbal threats recently. From home? He asked, pen poised above his notebook. Nathan hesitated, then sighed. My parents, they want us to sign over the house to them. My father's business is failing, and they need money. Officer Davis frowned. And you believe they're responsible for this vandalism? They came with 3 men 3 days ago, Nathan said. My father implied accidents could happen if we didn't cooperate. The officer made detailed notes. I'll file the report, but without witnesses or video evidence, it's going to be difficult to prove who did this. We understand, I said. We just want it on record in case things escalate further. I'd recommend a restraining order, Officer Davis suggested, and get those cameras installed as soon as possible. After he left, Nathan called his boss to explain he'd be late. My car's been vandalized, he said wearily. I need to get it towed and find a rental. I drove Nathan to work after arranging for his car to be towed to a repair shop. He was quiet during the drive, his face drawn with stress. I'll pick you up at 5, I told him as he got out. Call me if anything happens. Thanks, Cassie, he said, leaning in to kiss me goodbye. I don't know what I'd do without you right now. I spent the morning making calls to security companies and arranging expedited installation of cameras and a monitored alarm system. I also withdrew cash from our emergency fund, knowing we might need resources that couldn't be traced through credit card statements. At 2:30 p.m., my phone rang. It was Nathan. My father showed up at the office, he said, voice shaking with a mixture of anger and embarrassment. He made a scene in the lobby, shouting that I was ungrateful and betraying the family. Are you okay? No, he admitted. Amanda called me into her office afterward. She's concerned about how this family drama might affect our client relationships. Amanda was Nathan's boss, the founder of the architectural firm where he worked. She had always supported Nathan's talent, but the firm's reputation was built on discretion and professionalism. What did you tell her? The truth, that my parents are trying to force us to sign over our house and are using intimidation tactics. She was sympathetic but warned him to keep it from affecting his work. Did your father leave? Security escorted him out, but not before he told half the office that I was stealing family property and would regret my choices. By the time I picked Nathan up that evening, word had spread throughout his office. Colleagues gave him sympathetic or curious looks, and he could hear whispers stop the moment he entered the break room. Everyone's talking about it, he said as he slid into the passenger seat of my car. Trevor even asked if I was having mob problems because of the men who were with my dad during the confrontation at home. It'll blow over, I assured him, though deep down I wasn't certain it would. If Gerald was desperate enough to cause a scene at Nathan's workplace, he was likely desperate enough to take even more drastic measures. That evening, Nathan's phone rang nonstop. First was his sister Elaine, her voice heavy with worry. Nate? What's happening? Dad came home raging about you in the house. They're trying to force us to sign it over to them. Nathan explained the situation. They brought threatening men to our house and now my car's been vandalized. Oh, God, Elaine breathed out. I knew they were having money troubles, but I never thought they'd go this far. Nathan, be careful. Dad was on the phone earlier with someone and he sounded desperate. He kept saying he'd get the money one way or another. Thanks for the warning, Nathan said. You should distance yourself from this, Zane. I don't want you caught in the middle. You're my brother. I'm already in the middle, she said firmly. I'll let you know if I hear anything else. The next call was less supportive. Nathan's brother Richard, who worked in their father's business, was coldly angry. You're going to destroy this family, Richard accused without preamble. The business is on the brink and you're sitting in $1 million house you did nothing to earn. That house was Grandma's gift to us, not a family asset, Nathan argued, and threatening us isn't going to change that. You always were selfish, Richard spat. When this company goes under and 30 employees lose their jobs, that's on you. And don't think this ends with a few scratches on your precious car. Dad has connections you don't want to mess with. Nathan ended the call and turned off his phone, his hands trembling. My own family, he whispered, my own brother threatening me now. I sat beside him on the couch, holding his hand. We'll get through this, I promised. The security system will be installed tomorrow, and I've already spoken to a lawyer about the restraining order. I keep thinking this can't be real, Nathan said. That I'll wake up and my parents will be the people I thought they were. I didn't know how to tell him that people often aren't who we believe them to be. Sometimes the masks people wear are so convincing that when they finally slip, the reality is unrecognizable. I had learned that lesson years ago in my former career, but Nathan was learning it now in the most painful way possible. Try to get some sleep, I said gently. I'll stay up and keep watch tonight. You can't stay up all night, he protested. Trust me, I said with a small smile. I've had practice. He didn't question what I meant, too exhausted by the day's events to notice the hint about my past. As he fell into a troubled sleep, I positioned myself near the window, with a clear view of our driveway and front yard, prepared for a long night of vigilance. The security installation couldn't come soon enough, and soon I would need to make a decision about how much of my past to reveal to Nathan, because if things continued to escalate, I would need to employ skills I had hoped never to use again. The week following the car vandalism brought a tense quiet. Too quiet. Nathan's parents made no contact, and the threatening men didn't return. But instead of relief, I felt mounting dread. This wasn't a retreat. It was tactical patience. On Friday afternoon, while Nathan was at work, I made a decision. Sitting alone in our kitchen, I stared at my phone, contemplating the call I was about to make. Once I took this step, there would be no going back to the life I'd carefully constructed. I dialed a number I hadn't used in 5 years. Harris, answered a familiar voice. Amanda, it's Cassie Miller, formerly Cassandra Reynolds. There was a pause. Holy Reynolds, I thought you fell off the face of the earth. I needed a clean break, I explained. But now I need your help. Detective Amanda Harris had been my closest colleague at the Bureau. We'd worked together on the Donovan case, the one that had ultimately led to my departure from the FBI. You in trouble? she asked, her tone immediately professional. My husband's family his father's gotten involved with some dangerous people. They're trying to force us to sign over our house, and I'm concerned about escalation. I explained the situation in detail, using the precise, concise language of my former profession. It felt strange how easily I slipped back into that mindset. I can run background checks on those 3 men, Amanda offered, and check if Gerald Miller has any known associations in our database. I'd appreciate that. And Amanda, my husband doesn't know about my past. None of it. She asked, sounding surprised. He thinks you've always been a high school counselor who moved here for a fresh start after a bad breakup. Amanda whistled low. That's quite a cover story. You planning to tell him now? I don't see how I can avoid it. Not if you're going to protect him properly. After ending the call, I spent the afternoon preparing. I retrieved a locked box from the back of our closet, hidden behind winter clothing. Inside was a small Glock 43, properly registered and maintained, though I hadn't fired it in years. There were also credentials, case notes, and photographs I'd kept as insurance, despite official protocol requiring their surrender. When Nathan came home, I had dinner waiting and a bottle of his favorite wine open on the table. What's the occasion? He asked, looking surprised at the formal table setting. We need to talk, I said, my voice steady. And you might want some wine for this conversation. We ate in relative silence. Nathan sensed the gravity of whatever I was preparing to say. When we finished, I took a deep breath. Nathan, there's something important about me that I haven't told you. Something that changes how we need to handle the situation with your parents. He sat down, his wine glass in hand, giving me his full attention. What is it? Before I became a school counselor, I had a different career. I paused, meeting his eyes directly. I was an FBI agent specializing in organized crime investigations. Nathan stared at me, his expression frozen between disbelief and confusion. You were what? An FBI agent for 8 years. I left the bureau 5 years ago, just before we met. That's not possible, he stammered. You're a counselor. You have a degree in psychology. Your colleagues know you from graduate school. My undergraduate degree is in psychology, I explained. My graduate credentials were partly established as cover after I left the bureau. I did complete legitimate counseling training, but my history was adjusted. I opened the locked box I'd placed beside the table and showed him my old credentials. I was part of an organized crime task force. My last case involved bringing down the Donovan family in Boston. They were involved in everything, from racketeering to human trafficking. Nathan picked up my old ID card, staring at the photo of me with shorter hair and a more severe expression. Why? Didn't you tell me? We've been married for 4 years. The Donovan case ended badly. A source was compromised. 2 agents died. I received threats against my family. I swallowed hard. I requested a new identity and location. Not witness protection exactly, but a bureau-supported fresh start. Telling anyone about my past could have created risk. Even your husband, his voice held hurt, especially my husband. The less you knew, the safer you were. I reached for his hand, and after a while convinced myself it was better this way. I wanted to be Cassie Miller, school counselor. I wanted to leave Cassandra Reynolds behind. Nathan withdrew his hand, standing up to pace the kitchen. So for our entire relationship, you've been lying to me about something fundamental? I've never lied about who I am as a person, I said quietly. My feelings for you, my values, the life we've built, that's all real. I just couldn't tell you about my professional past. And you're telling me now because of my parents? Because of the threats? I nodded. I have training and connections that can help us. The men your father brought here, the tactics they're using, I recognize the patterns. This isn't just desperate family drama. Nathan, your father has likely gotten involved with organized crime figures to keep his business afloat. Nathan sank back into his chair. This is insane. My straight-laced country club father involved with criminals? My wife a former FBI agent? I feel like I'm in some bizarre movie. I know it's a lot to process, I acknowledged. But we don't have the luxury of time. Your parents' desperation is escalating. And if your father owes money to the wrong people, they won't stop at vandalism. What exactly are you suggesting? First, I've asked a former colleague to run background checks on the men who came to our house. Second, we document everything and build our legal case. Third, we prepare for worst-case scenarios. Like what? Like a more aggressive attempt to force us out or harm us. I hesitated. Nathan, I know how these situations typically evolve. The pattern suggests we haven't seen their worst yet. Nathan was silent for a long moment, staring at my old badge. Finally, he looked up, his eyes troubled but clear. I'm angry that you kept this from me, he said quietly. I thought we didn't have secrets, but right now, we have more immediate problems. He took a deep breath. Tell me what we need to do. Relief washed through me, though I knew this conversation was far from over. The hurt in his eyes told me we would revisit this betrayal of trust many times. Thank you for understanding, I said softly. I don't understand. Not fully, he admitted. But I trust you. Even now, I trust that you had reasons. And honestly, having an FBI agent for a wife might be exactly what we need right now. I gave him a small smile. Former FBI agent, but some skills you never lose. As I began outlining our security plan, I watched Nathan struggling to reconcile the woman he'd married with this new revelation. It would take time for him to process. But time was the one thing we might not have. Gerald and his associates wouldn't wait for us to work through our marital issues. And I was right. The next morning brought evidence that the situation was about to get much worse. We returned from grocery shopping on Saturday afternoon to find our front door slightly ajar. Nathan moved to enter, but I grabbed his arm, pulling him back to the car. Call the police, I instructed, my voice low and urgent. Report a break-in, stay in the car, and lock the doors. Where are you going? He asked as I reached into my purse to clear the house. Cassie, no, he protested. If someone's in there, trust my training, I said firmly, revealing my Glock. Make the call now. I approached the house cautiously, using techniques that had once been second nature. The security system should have alerted us to any breach, but a quick glance at the control panel showed it had been disabled. Professional work. Room by room, I cleared our home, finding it empty of intruders but ransacked thoroughly. In the office, our filing cabinets hung open, papers scattered across the floor. The safe behind the bookshelf stood open and empty. The family jewelry and emergency cash were gone. But it was the targeted nature of the search that confirmed my suspicions. Specific. Documents were missing, including the house deed, insurance papers, and our identifications. This wasn't a random burglary. It was a focused attempt to gather information and valuables. In the bedroom, a message had been spray-painted across our wall, "Next time you'll be home." I heard sirens approaching and holstered my weapon before the police arrived. Officer Davis was among the responding officers, his expression grim as he surveyed the damage. "You're lucky you weren't home," he commented as his partner took photographs of the graffiti. "It wasn't luck," I replied. "They knew our routine. They waited until we left." Nathan stood in the doorway of our bedroom, his face pale. "They took the deed to the house," he said, "and Grandma Gloria's jewelry." "Check your security footage," Officer Davis suggested. "The system company should have cloud backup even if they disabled the main panel." He was right. When the technicians from the security company arrived, they were able to retrieve footage showing Troy and Devin breaking in through our back door, their movements methodical and practiced. The timestamp showed they'd entered just 20 minutes after we left. "I recognize them," Officer Davis said, studying the footage. "They're known associates of Frank Wilson, small-time enforcer for bigger operations." "Frank Wilson," I repeated, filing the name away to research later. After the police left, Nathan and I began the process of cleaning up. As we worked, in silence, his phone rang. It was Richard. "Enjoying your weekend?" his brother asked, his tone smug. "I hear you had some unexpected visitors." Nathan's knuckles whitened around the phone. "Did you know about this? Did you know they were going to break into our home?" "Let's just say I wasn't surprised. Dad's patience is running out, Nathan. The offer still stands. Sign over the house and this all goes away. Tell Dad he's just added breaking and entering, theft, and criminal threats to his list of problems, Nathan snapped before hanging up. They're getting bolder, I observed carefully, sweeping up broken glass from a picture frame. The photo inside, one of Nathan and me on our wedding day, had been deliberately torn. What's our next move? Nathan asked, his jaw set in determination that replaced his earlier shock. Before I could answer, my phone buzzed with a text from Amanda. Call me. Found connection between Gerald Miller and Frank Wilson. Not good. First, we finish securing the house, I said. Then I need to make a call. The next morning, as we were replacing the locks for the second time that week, I spotted a familiar SUV parked down the street. Nathan, go inside, I said calmly. We have company. What? Who? Marcus, the tall one from the other day. He's watching the house. Nathan's face hardened. I'm calling the police. Not yet, I said. Let me handle this first. Against Nathan's protests, I walked calmly to my car and drove to the nearby grocery store. As expected, the black SUV followed at a discreet distance. In the store parking lot, I parked deliberately in a secluded corner and waited. Marcus approached my car window, his confidence evident in his relaxed posture. He clearly didn't view me as a threat. Mrs. Miller, he said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Funny running into you here. Is it? I asked coolly. Seems like you've been running into me quite deliberately. He chuckled. Just keeping an eye on a valuable property. Your father-in-law is very concerned about his investment. It's not his investment, I replied sharply, and you can tell him, and Frank Wilson, that harassment and breaking and entering are serious charges. A flicker of surprise crossed his face when I said Wilson's name. I don't know what you're talking about, lady, but accidents happen to nice houses like yours. Electrical fires, gas leaks, tragic things, especially when the owners are inside. I stepped out of the car, watching his posture shift as he reassessed me. Let me be very clear, I said, voice dropping low. I know exactly who you are and who you work for. Your presence at my property has been documented and reported. If anything happens to this house or to us, the evidence points directly to you, Wilson, and Gerald Miller. You threatening me? He asked, amusement fading. No, I'm informing. You have facts. Here's another fact. I'm not the defenseless housewife you think I am. So the next time you or your friends come onto my property uninvited, be prepared for consequences. I held his gaze until uncertainty crept into his eyes. People like Marcus relied on intimidating the vulnerable. When that power dynamic shifts, they retreat to rethink. Just delivering a message, he said, stepping back. Mr. Miller wants this resolved by Monday, one way or another. Duly noted, I replied, getting back in my car. I have a message too. Tell Frank Wilson to research who he's dealing with. The name Cassandra Reynolds might interest him. I drove off, watching Marcus frozen in the parking lot through the rearview mirror. Using my former name was a calculated risk, but if Wilson was smart enough to do his homework, it might buy us time. When I returned home, Nathan was frantic. What were you thinking confronting him alone? You're creating uncertainty. I explained calmly. People like Marcus rely on fear. When you show none, it disrupts their playbook. And if he had attacked you, he wouldn't have done it in public, not without orders. I touched Nathan's cheek gently. Trust me to know how these people operate. The next day, we met with Rebecca Foster, a lawyer specializing in property disputes and restraining orders. Her office was in a converted Victorian, much like our home, with modern security discreetly integrated into the historic architecture. Based on what you've told me, you have grounds for both criminal charges and civil action, Rebecca said after hearing our story. The documented threats, break-in, and vandalism all form a clear pattern of harassment and intimidation. What about the house itself? Nathan asked. Could they have any legal claim? None whatsoever, Rebecca assured him. I reviewed the will and property transfer. It's ironclad. Your grandmother left it specifically to you, not your parents. There's more, I added. I have reason to believe Gerald Miller owes Frank Wilson, a known criminal figure, Significant. Debts. The pressure to acquire our property likely stems from that. Rebecca's eyebrows rose. That adds a serious dimension. If we can prove that connection, the criminal charges become much more severe. My former colleague is gathering evidence on that front, I said, glancing at Nathan, who tensed slightly at the mention of my previous career. I'll file for an emergency restraining order tomorrow morning, Rebecca said. In the meantime, document everything. Avoid direct contact with any of these individuals and maintain your security measures. As we left, Nathan looked more determined than he had in days. I'm done being a victim, he said firmly. It's time we fought back. I squeezed his hand. That's exactly what we're going to do. Monday morning, I made a series of calls while Nathan reluctantly left for work, escorted by a private security guard we'd hired for the week. Amanda Harris was my first call. What have you found? I asked without preamble. Your father-in-law is in deep trouble, Amanda replied. He owes Wilson nearly $800,000 from gambling debts and failed investments. Wilson's using the debt to launder money through the import business. That explains the desperation for liquid assets, I said, amused. The house would solve his immediate problem. There's more, Amanda continued. Wilson's operation is under investigation by the Boston field office as part of a larger RICO case. Your father-in-law is already on their radar. Can you connect me with a case agent? Already did. Jessica Parker is expecting your call. She's particularly interested in the 3 musclemen harassing you. Jessica Parker turned out to be sharp, no nonsense, with an impressive record of organized crime convictions. We arranged to meet at a downtown coffee shop to keep a low profile. Your father-in-law picked the wrong partners, Jessica said over espresso. Wilson is under pressure from higher-ups in the organization. When people get desperate, they make mistakes, like sending the same men to threaten you and then break into your home. Exactly, I said. We've been building a case for months but lacked direct evidence of Wilson's enforcement tactics. Your situation provides that. What are you proposing? A coordinated approach. We continue our investigation while you maintain legal pressure. If Wilson or your father-in-law escalate, we'll have grounds for direct intervention. And if they get aggressive in the meantime? Jessica smiled slightly. From what I remember of your work on the Donovan case, you're more than capable of handling yourself until backup arrives. With law enforcement formally involved, I turned to our home security. The system installed after the break-in was good, but not enough. I called a specialist I'd worked with during my bureau days, Michael Sullivan, a former Army Ranger now running a private security firm. The existing setup has too many vulnerabilities, Michael said after inspecting the property. I can upgrade you to a system that'd make Fort Knox jealous, but it'll cost. Do it, I authorized. Money's not the issue right now. Within 48 hours, our home had military-grade surveillance, reinforced entry points, motion sensors, and a panic room converted from our walk-in closet. Michael's team finished as Nathan came home Tuesday evening. Is all this really necessary? Nathan asked, watching the technicians calibrate the cameras. Better to have it and not need it, I said. Besides, we're not just protecting ourselves, we're gathering evidence. That evening, I called a local jeweler known for buying estate pieces, loudly mentioning that we'd be bringing in family jewelry for appraisal Thursday. Then I called our insurance company to discuss increasing coverage for irreplaceable items still at home. What are you doing? Nathan asked after I hung up. Creating bait, I explained. We need them to make another move, but this time on our terms. You're trying to get them to break in again? He asked incredulously. In a controlled situation, where we're prepared and can document everything, I laid out the plan. They think we're vulnerable and frightened. We'll use that misconception. Next was confronting Richard. Nathan's brother had been Gerald's willing accomplice, and possibly our weakest link for evidence. We arranged to cross paths at a family cousin's birthday dinner downtown. The tension was palpable when we arrived. Martha and Gerald hadn't come, but Richard was there with his wife, Laura, who looked uncomfortable. I'm surprised you had the nerve to show up, Richard said quietly when he saw us. We're not the ones who should be ashamed, Nathan replied calmly. How much do you know about Dad's arrangement with Frank Wilson? Richard's face paled. I don't know what you mean. The FBI does, I interjected quietly. They're building a RICO case. Anyone involved faces serious charges. You're bluffing, Richard hissed, but uncertainty showed in his eyes. We have the break-in on video, Nathan continued. Troy and Devin are identified in police reports. The question is, how involved were you? Did you just know, or did you help plan it? I discreetly activated the recorder in my purse. Richard glanced nervously, then leaned in. Look, I didn't know they were breaking in. Dad just said he was putting pressure on you to be reasonable about the house. He needs it to pay off Wilson, before things get worse. Worse how? Nathan pressed. Wilson's people don't play games, Richard said. Dad said either he gets the money from selling your house, or they'll collect through the business and the family. So you helped threaten your own brother? Richard looked ashamed. I was protecting the business. Our employees, our family name, by becoming criminals yourselves, Nathan said flatly. Did Mom know about the break-in too? Richard hesitated. She knows everything. She's the one who suggested using the house to solve the problem. As we left the restaurant, the recording safely secured, Nathan was silent. Learning his mother's role hit him hard. I need to talk to her, he finally said one-on-one. Are you sure that's wise? No, but it's necessary. I need to hear it from her directly. The next morning, Nathan arranged to meet Martha at a cafe near her weekly hair appointment. I watched from my car across the street, ready to intervene if needed. Their conversation was intense. I couldn't hear their words but saw Martha's face shift, from composed superiority to defensive anger, and finally to fear, when Nathan revealed how much we knew. When she left 30 minutes later, her perfect posture crumbled. She glanced nervously around before hurrying to her car. She admitted everything. Nathan reported when he returned. Dad owes Wilson for gambling debts and failed investments. They've been using the business to launder money for Wilson's organization. When that wasn't enough, Wilson demanded more direct compensation. Did she understand the legal jeopardy? She does now. I told her about the FBI investigation and the evidence we've gathered. She nearly collapsed when I mentioned RICO charges. Nathan stared out the window. She begged me to reconsider about the house, said it was the only way out for them. And what? Did you tell her? That they chose this path, not us. Criminals threatened their son and daughter-in-law. Grandma Gloria would be ashamed. His voice broke slightly. And that if they come near us again, we'll use every piece of evidence we have. As we drove home, I received a text from Jessica Parker. Wilson making moves. Be alert. Backup ready if needed. Our trap was set. Now we just had to wait for someone to take the bait. Thursday night, I sat in our newly converted panic room monitoring the security feed while Nathan tried to sleep upstairs. The jeweler appointment I'd loudly discussed was scheduled for Friday morning, so Thursday night was the logical time for another break-in attempt. At 11:43, the perimeter alarm silently alerted me to movement in our backyard. 3 figures appeared. On the infrared camera approaching the rear door, I recognized Troy, Devin, and Marcus immediately. Nathan, I called softly through the intercom we'd installed. They're here. 3 of them at the back door. Activate Protocol 2. Nathan insisted on being part of the plan despite my concerns. He quickly moved to his position in the upstairs hallway where he could monitor the second floor while staying safely out of sight. I watched as Troy worked on the back door lock while the others kept watch. Despite the upgraded security, they managed to disable the visible alarm panel and enter within minutes. Professional work confirming my suspicions about their background. Once inside, I activated the silent alarm that alerted both our private security team and police officers Jessica had stationed nearby. Then I sent the text we'd arranged. Canaries in the cage. The intruders moved methodically through the first floor, heading directly for the study where we'd conspicuously placed a new safe. Inside was costume jewelry designed to look valuable, along with fake documentation for offshore accounts. Another piece of bait. There at the safe, Nathan whispered, through the intercom. Stay in position. Help is 3 minutes out. As the men worked on cracking the safe, headlights swept across the front of the house. A car pulled up outside. We have new arrivals, I reported, switching to the front camera feed. It's your parents. Gerald and Martha approached the front, door looking anxious. Gerald unlocked it with a key they had made during the previous break-in. Their coordination with the intruders was now undeniable, captured clearly on multiple cameras. "Mom and Dad are inside," Nathan confirmed, voice tight. "They're talking to the men. I can see them now on the interior cameras." Gerald gestured, emphatically, while Martha stood slightly behind him, eyes darting nervously. "Get the deed and anything valuable," Gerald instructed. "We need to make this look like a regular burglary gone wrong." "What about the occupants?" Marcus asked. Gerald hesitated, then said, "Do what you have to do. Just make sure we get what we need." Martha gasped. "Gerald, you said no one would get hurt." "Be quiet," Gerald hissed. "It's too late for cold feet." That was all the evidence we needed. I pressed the final alert button that would bring in the tactical team, then used the house intercom system to address the intruders. "Attention! This property is under surveillance. Law enforcement has been notified and is surrounding the premises. Put your hands up and remain where you are." Chaos erupted. Troy and Devin bolted for the back door while Marcus drew a weapon. Gerald stood frozen in shock, and Martha began to cry. "Federal agents! Nobody move!" came shouts from outside as tactical. Teams breached both entrances simultaneously. Within seconds, the house was swarming with FBI agents and police officers. Troy and Devin were tackled attempting to flee, while Marcus surrendered his weapon after a tense standoff. Gerald and Martha were handcuffed and led outside to waiting vehicles. I emerged from the panic room to find Nathan standing at the top of the stairs watching the scene unfold with a stunned expression. "It's over," I told him, taking his hand. "We got everything on camera, multiple felonies, conspiracy, clear evidence of their connection to Wilson." Nathan nodded silently, watching as his parents were placed in separate police cars. Jessica Parker approached us once the scene was secured. "Textbook operation," she commented. "We've got Wilson in custody, too. Picked him up simultaneously at his club downtown. His operation is finished." "What happens now?" Nathan asked. "Formal charges will be filed tomorrow. The evidence is overwhelming, so I expect plea deals will be offered. Your parents face serious charges, but cooperation could reduce their sentences." As the law enforcement teams processed the scene, Nathan and I sat on our front porch watching the activity. Blue and red lights flashed across our yard, illuminating the historic facade of the home that had become the center of so much conflict. "I never imagined it would end like this," Nathan said quietly. "My parents in handcuffs, their business exposed as a money laundering operation." "I'm sorry it came to this," I said, meaning it. Despite everything, these were still his parents. "Don't be," Nathan replied. "They made their choices." He squeezed my hand. "In a strange way, their threats revealed the truth about you. No more secrets between us." I nodded, realizing he was right. The crisis forced me to reveal my past, breaking down the barrier between my former and current selves. No more secrets. I agreed. Cassandra Reynolds and Cassie Miller were finally one and the same. As dawn broke over our neighborhood, the last police car pulled away. Our house stood quiet but fundamentally changed. Like us, it had weathered a storm and remained standing, perhaps stronger for having been tested. Conclusion. Aftermath. The legal proceedings moved swiftly, backed by overwhelming evidence and the broader RICO investigation into Wilson's organization. Prosecutors had a powerful case. Gerald faced charges of conspiracy, extortion, money laundering, and solicitation of burglary. Martha was charged as an accessory, though her attorney argued she'd been coerced by her husband. Troy, Devin, and Marcus quickly turned on their employers, offering testimony against Wilson and Gerald for reduced sentences. Richard faced charges for his role in the intimidation campaign. Nathan testified at his father's preliminary hearing, his voice steady as he recounted the threats and break-ins. I sat in the courtroom, proud of his strength. My father betrayed everything he claimed to value, Nathan told the court. Family, honesty, integrity. He risked his own son and daughter-in-law's safety to solve problems he created. Gerald barely looked at Nathan, eyes fixed on the table. Martha, seated separately with her own attorney, wept quietly. In the end, Gerald accepted a plea deal, 12 years in federal prison. Martha received 5 years probation and community service. Their business was liquidated to pay restitution, and both were barred from financial positions for life. The aftermath rippled through the family. Some relatives blamed Nathan for destroying the family. Others, like Elaine, stood firmly by our side. "I always knew Dad had a dark side," Elaine confided over coffee. "He threatened to cut off my college funds whenever I disagreed. He pitted Richard and Nathan against each other. But I never imagined he'd go this far." Richard's situation was complicated. Initially charged as co-conspirator, he eventually received a suspended sentence after cooperating. His marriage didn't survive, and he moved across the country. Months later, Richard called Nathan. "I was wrong," he said simply. "I believed Dad's lies because it was easier than facing the truth." "It'll take time," Nathan replied. "Trust isn't rebuilt overnight." "I know. I just wanted to say I'm sorry." Nathan began therapy to process the trauma. "I keep wondering if I ever really knew them," he confessed. "Were they always capable of this? Or did desperation change them?" "People are complicated," I said gently. "They compartmentalize, justify actions they'd usually condemn. Your father probably never saw himself as the villain. How do you reconcile loving someone knowing what they're capable of?" "You don't necessarily. You acknowledge both. The father who taught you to ride a bike also threatened your safety. Both truths exist." My professional life changed too. After talks with Nathan, I accepted a consulting position with the Boston field office, focusing on financial crimes while maintaining my counseling practice. "Are you sure about this?" Nathan asked. "You left that world for a reason." "I left to escape trauma," I explained, "but using those skills now to protect us, I'm embracing all parts of myself." He nodded. "I like that. Cassie whole, not compartmentalized. Greater than the sum of her parts." Our home, once a source of conflict, became a symbol of resilience. We resumed renovations honoring Gloria's legacy and our journey. "Grandma would approve of the security upgrades," Nathan joked as we installed garden lighting. "She always said, 'Better safe than sorry.'" 1 year later, we hosted a dinner for those who stood by us: Elaine and her husband, Amanda Harris, Jessica Parker, and Rebecca Foster. Around Gloria's antique dining table, we toasted. "To homes," Nathan said simply. "Not just buildings, but safety and truth." "To picking the wrong targets," I added with a smile, squeezing his hand. As laughter and conversation filled the room, I looked at the home we fought to protect. It wasn't just a house threatened, but the life and future we were building. Fighting for one strengthened the other. Later, on our porch under the stars, Nathan wrapped his arm around me. "When I first found out about your FBI past, I was shocked. But now, I can't imagine you any other way. The complications, the contradictions, they made you who you are." I leaned my head on his shoulder, feeling at home in both house and identity for the first time in years. "You were right that night," Nathan murmured. "They really did pick the wrong target." I'd love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever stood up to family crossing boundaries? What would you have done in Cassie and Nathan's shoes? Drop a comment below, hit like if you enjoyed this ride. Subscribe for more true stories, and share with someone who loves justice and standing strong. Thank you for spending time with me today. Remember, sometimes the quiet ones have the most surprising strengths.